you would expect the Education Secretary, at the very least, if no other ministers, but at least the Education Secretary, to be the champion for education. I know the First Minister has kind of gone off education, doesn't regard it as the top priority anymore because the numbers don't suit her argument, that it's now a long-term ambition rather than judge me on my record. Well, you can't judge me on my record if she's not going to be in office any longer. It's going to be that long-term to get the progress that we're looking for. But for the Education Secretary, not even to argue for an additional £43 million to plug the hole that they're cutting from 9 challenge authorities across the country is depressing. And it's a predictable argument from SNP ministers to say, if we want to make the case against something, that we have to personally find the money in the budget, even though we don't have access to the books. We don't know what secret pots of money they've got for their favourite schemes in the future. It's the SNP ministers that should be standing up for these things, but they seem incapable of doing so. Now, the SNP have been slow-footed on closing the poverty-related attainment gap. Now, while we were in government in the UK, we were arguing for a pupil premium back in 2010. Targeted funding for those, not just now, for those in disadvantaged communities. 5 years before this SNP government woke up to the problem. The poverty-related attainment gap is still growing wider. The complacency this morning in the Education Committee was staggering, grasping onto little bit of statistics to try and prove that somehow it had closed before the dreaded pandemic came along and blew all their progress away. That was none of the case. None of that happened. If you look at the numbers, the gap was growing wider. It's not narrowing. Now, we had concerns about the 9 challenge authorities initially. We wanted the money to go across the country. We were in favour of it being targeted, like the pupil premium in England, towards those wherever they were in the country. But since it had been set up and the structures developed and the staff employed and the best practice developed in those 9 local authorities, it seems absolutely nuts to pull the rug away from them just when they're managing to make a little bit of progress in those communities.